Thinking about GLP-1s to help with weight loss? Go micro with Noom. You start off with a small dose of medication, then gradually increase as your body reacts. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $79 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Initial 3-week subscription and 4 weeks of medication from $79 plus tax, and $179 per month plus tax for 7-week subscription thereafter. Final pricing depends on program selection.
Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show on which we explore the mystery of the human personality and the great human adventure all through the lens of the Enneagram. My name is Anthony Skinner, your producer and co-host. Hey, we're in a series called Courageous Conversations, all about how you show up when something significant is at stake. Because it's not just about having the right words, it's about what's happening inside of you when conflict hits. And you can have a great strategy, but if you don't understand your default response to conflict, you'll fall back in the same patterns every time. So today, we're revisiting a conversation Ian and I had with James Guinn, who helps people understand their conflict style, how they react when emotions rise and pressure builds. This is where it all connects: emotional awareness, conflict style, and how we navigate hard conversations and negotiation. Because once you understand your tendencies, you're not just reacting, you're choosing. So as you listen, ask yourself, when conflict shows up, what's my move? Now, here's our conversation with James Guinn.
Hey, Typology Tribe, we got a big one today. We're going to answer a question that everybody has, and that is, how do I get along with anyone? And we're talking to the person that, this is what they do. In fact, our guest today, James Guinn, has a brand new book, How to Get Along with Anyone, the playbook for predicting and preventing conflict at work and at home, co-written by John Elliott. He is an Enneagram 3 with a 2-wing. James, welcome to the show.
And Ian, thank you. And Anthony, thank you so much for having me, and excited to dive into personalities.
All right. Now, you have a background with the Enneagram. It's a system that you have studied somewhat and use in your own work, right?
Absolutely. I can honestly say that we use that at the forefront of every training we do, every leadership assessment with all the organizations that we work with.
That's amazing. So you're a conflict resolution specialist, and you are talking to 2 4s on the Enneagram who hate conflict. And actually, let's find out. Okay, let's find out. So let's figure out. You've got these 5 categories of people, right? You have avoiders, competitors, collaborators, accommodators, analyzers, and these are sort of different ways of understanding. They're typologies, right? It's a typology. Different ways that people react to conflict. Is that basically what the 5 categories are?
So that's spot on. I think with the emphasis on this is how we react when we're what we call triggered. When emotion spikes to a certain point in the brain that reason lowers, to where this is our kind of default reaction. I may be able to be a different, typology, but man, when I deal with that roommate, that in-law, that person, I can't help it. I default back to this.
All right. So let's figure out I want to figure out my conflict style, or whatever, however you want to say that, right? So where would you begin with me?
Sure. So I think we'll see if 3s and 4s can become best friends and truly get along with anyone. So that can be left up to the listeners to see if that works or not. So typically the first thing that we break our profiles down into is not necessarily the handling approach. It's more what triggers you specifically. And conflict we break down to 3 specific types, and all 3 are frustrating. They're annoying. Nobody likes them. Nobody enjoys them except weird people like me and John that want to write a book about it. But they fall into one category, which is task conflict. So task conflict is all about getting things done. It is I have a 17-point checklist, and that is my checklist for the day. And all of a sudden, somebody comes in, somebody does something to disrupt that process. And I can't get my work done. I can't check those marks off the list, or I'm really wanting somebody else to really get their things done and they don't. And that just makes that emotion rise. The second is process conflict. That is, I have a process. Ian and Anthony, I've got a process for this podcast and getting this message out and everything that we do in my work, in my home life, in my relationships. And somebody disrupts that process. Somebody comes in and says, I know a better way of doing things. I'm going to do it this way. And that process gets changed. For some of us, that is really, truly the trigger. And the final is relational conflict. That is all about the person, their personality types, what we call best teammates and worst teammates. Is it a 3 mixing with a 9? And how does that work to where you see that person's name flash on your phone on a Friday afternoon? It just makes that emotion rise. So one of the first steps we do is determine which of those 3, even though they're all frustrating, really just create those emotional triggers.
Oh, right away, I'd say it's relational.
Agreed. Same here.
2 4s. Just brought out the
fours.
Relational. All right. What's the next thing you might ask?
Next thing is, how do you communicate? So I know the Enneagram breaks down incredibly all the different aspects of communication, how people prefer to communicate. So the first thing we like to see is, what is a person's preferred mode of communication? Do they prefer to communicate in person? For us, that's going to be our collaborators, because they want to analyze, manipulate, now that's a bad word, but manipulate the situation, read people. Our competitors also love in-person communication because you get things done right away. Whereas your avoiders, your accommodators, that's their worst nightmare. Avoiders don't want to deal with you until they have to deal with you. And an accommodator, the last thing they're going to do is be confronted. Versus, an email form of communication, which we see a lot of times with the corporations we work with. Your analyzers absolutely love it because it's not weird if I send you an email with 14 different bullet points and it's broken out in a long way. But if I send you a text message, it looks like a junior high breakup message is really what it comes down to. So the different modes of communication, whether it's in person, whether it's email, or as we see a lot with accommodators, that social media, I don't want to say passive aggressive, but really passive aggressive kind of tone.
In person for me, for sure.
In person for me, for sure.
There you go. Same here with the 3. So then the next thing we look at is the process of how a conflict gets brought in. If you have a conflict with someone, are you going directly to the person? Are you going to everyone but the person involved? Or are you going to everyone else first to gather your story and then sitting down with the person? So and that's where it gets a little tricky. So which are you?
Were those 2 options? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So it's a go to directly to the person you're in conflict with. It's a go to everybody except the person you're in conflict with. Or you're going to go to everybody first, get the full story, and then sit down with the person you're in conflict.
I go to everyone first. But, okay, so this gets tricky.
Sure.
It sort of depends on my season of life you're talking about. But
sure.
If it's not something terribly complicated, I'll go direct. But if it's something that's relationally tricky, and I'm trying to protect the relationship, and it's probably a bigger deal than a little deal, then I'm going to stop and say, I'm going to stop with 3 or 4 people and go, look, I've got sort of a tricky situation. I'd love to hear what you think.
Sure. Oh, love it.
That's straight to the person. If it's something that involves a group of people and I need more information, then I would try to get more info to try to basically bring resolution.
But I don't go around people's back. I don't gossip about it. Like, I don't go around and just talk with everybody else and never talk to the person. That is definitely what I'm not doing that. Everything is going to be about, how do I get this resolved?
Yeah.
But if the stakes are high, right? If there's a relationship on the line, if it, or if it's going to cause pain, I'm going to not just rely on my own wisdom. I'm going to double check it with others. But if it's just like a little thing, the other night you hurt my feelings when you said that, that's a one-on-one thing. I don't need to stop anywhere for that one.
Sure. No, absolutely. And that's where we see, we would talk about the analyzer profile. That's someone who goes to everybody else, gathers their case, and then sits down and presents that case, and they make firm opinions. That is 5 all day. And I always would talk to our fives. It's, hey, you're a five, and here are amazing skill sets that you have. This is going to be your default reaction. And hell, there are plenty of situations where that is the thing to do. You don't want to rush to judgment. You don't want to make emotions spike even more. You really want to gather that full picture. But I mean, Ian, you said it best. There's some situations where we've got a Barney Fife it and nip it in the bud. We don't have emotional time, effort, and energy to go around and different things when really it's a, hey man, you hurt my feelings here. This is how are we gonna fix this? We need to be a 3. We need to be an 8. We need to, take a certain approach with that. And that's really where, a lot of the techniques and things we focus on are, hey, there's, as the Enneagram does the best, is, hey, there's pros and cons of each. But really, it's about what situations do you need to be a 3? Do you need to be a 5? Do you need to be an analyzer? Do you need to be a competitor or collaborator?
All right. So any more questions for us, or are you honing in on us?
No, like we would ever analyze each other on a podcast. That would be so weird. So I think biggest thing that I've always found so fascinating is the wing concept. So I think that's the biggest thing after speeches or trainings or whatever we do is, cool, I'm this, but at home, I'm also this. So I think in y'all's opinion, just personally, or just what you see in your professional experience, how often you see people differ from at work and at home versus, man, my default might be this, but in some situations, I revert back to this.
Yeah. Well, the personality, as I understand it, right, is fluid and dynamic. It's adaptable. And so if you are rigid in your personality style, then that's usually an indicator in its most extreme form of rigidity of pathology. If you there's the possible presence of a personality disorder, right? That's that kind of rigidity, the ability, the non-adaptability is not a good sign, right? But in most people who are within the bell curve of, just garden variety neurotics, yes, people's personalities adapt. Who you are at work can change a little bit and shift a little bit when you go home. I don't know if it's wing related necessarily. I'd have to really think about that. But the wing is always in the mix, right? To a greater or lesser degree, depending on how heavy the wing is. Right? Some wings are really heavy. I have a very strong 3 wing. It's so strong that sometimes it gets blurry between 4 and 3. Others might have a very light 3 wing, almost virtually not affecting the core type. It's not influencing it very much. So that would be another kind of factor in the equation. Tell me what your thoughts are on it.
Sure. I mean, I think we see, going back to emotion being kind of the key trigger, is that somebody at work, they can sit down and all day they can be a certain profile, they can be a certain personality, they can act a specific way, but once they come home and that emotion starts to rise, they deal with certain people, they can't help but revert back to a specific profile. But
yeah. So all right. So what other questions do you have for us so we can determine which of these 5 categories maybe that we fit into?
Sure. I think the final is tone of communication. That's the one we kind of revert back to a lot. And it's, whenever you're in a conflict setting specifically with that disclaimer, are you going to ask those leading questions, really open it up to try and gain as much information as possible? Are you more blunt, direct, and to the point, or is it a kind of dismissive? We're not in conflict right now. I want to read you. I want to fill you out to see how upset you are first.
The first one. I tend to be very relational, but I'm a therapist, right? And maybe I became a therapist because I have this style, right? But it's more like, let me ask some questions, find out what's going on here, and I'm very feeling oriented. So I'm like, tell me more. But I tend to be calm. I am not explosive. I am not blunt. I don't have that 8 energy in a conflict, right? Sometimes 3s can be blunt, not as blunt as 8s typically, but because they're concerned with efficiencies. So it's like, okay, let's just get to the bottom of this. Let's solve the problem, and then we can move on to to the work we have at hand, right? I'm a little bit more like protect the relationship, listen, honor the other person, care about what they have to say. Now, I will say, if somebody is really aggressive with me, really aggressive, I'll stay calm, but I will get very clear.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I will get clear and firm, but still, I don't remember the last time I blew my gasket or something like that. What about you, Ant?
Yeah. So again, super relational. Definitely want to protect the relationship, like you're saying. So a lot of questions, listening, really listening, and listening for things. Paying attention, trying to get to the heart of the matter, the need under whatever this person's feeling. Yeah. But same thing. Like I had a situation probably 3 days ago where someone basically, kind of went at me, and I've got no problem pushing back, not losing it, but like addressing the issue and like,
Yeah. That's so funny, man, because I also think there's a correlation sometimes between size and that ability to do that. Like I'm a little guy. Like I weigh 137 ding dang pounds. Okay. So, you're a big guy, and I think as a kid, I had to learn in conflict situations how to be fast on my feet and also fast with my words. But then I learned over time, like, how do I get this into where we resolve the situation, where there's kindness, understanding, and where everybody kind of has a win in the end of some kind. And we walk away with some reconciliation. So where are we, James? Who am I?
Person.
Yeah, you're a sick person. You are sick, man.
That's why we all get along together. So we all get along. So yeah. No, I love it. I see some analyzers. I think that's not going to be rushed into judgment. Not going to try and they're never going to blow up. They're not going to see that as counterproductive. Going to always go around, get the full story, but have no problem being blunt and direct when they need to be, which is those a little bit of cheating, but knowing that y'all were fours before. So I think the biggest thing that I love the most about the Enneagram is it's practical. It's practical and it's relatable. And I love whether it's in a corporate setting or it's sitting around with my own family or friends or in-laws, and it's hey, I'm a 3-wing this, I'm a 9-wing this, I'm a this. The thing that I love about the Enneagram, which I know we're legally not allowed to talk bad about e-colors or any of these others on this podcast, right? So you guys can edit that out. So I don't know if y'all dealt with Chevron, but I've dealt with Chevron where they introduce everybody as, hey, I'm a green dot mixed with an orange dot on a rainy day, but on a sunny day, by God, I'm a blue dot mixed with a purple dot. What are you guys
I'm
doing?
Utterly confused.
Exactly. Same. So that's where I walk in and I'm like, guys, look, you guys have done the Enneagram. They're like, yeah, I've done the Enneagram. I'm this and this. I'm like, great. That's awesome. We can get to work because I know it's practical. So I think that's the biggest thing I love is, the practical aspect is great. I'm a this. I can profile that someone else is a this. What do I do about it? How do I get along with someone that's on the opposite end of the spectrum of that person I profile? And so that's where I love to hear from you guys, the practical side. I know I'm a this, and I know this profile really is going to trigger me. In y'all's opinion, what do you recommend in terms of how to have that both personally, but also with other people?
Well, I do. Most of my work is in the corporate space, right? And of course, the issue of conflict always comes up. Like, how do different types respond to conflict? And I always say, well, it depends, right? There are some set kind of general answers that you can give, but people are also particular, right? Like, they're not just, it's not like every single Enneagram 8 responds to conflict by being blunt, domineering, and overwhelming, right? I know some 8s that have, first of all, they've either evolved and grown, and so they don't default to that as much, right, when they get triggered, though it's probably a greater temptation, right? And I think also that it depends on how big the trigger is, and also what it triggers, right? Because when you go into that limbic brain and you're that reptilian brain, and it gets triggered, and there's some connection to past trauma involved, which then just mushrooms the experience, right? Then types can really act out of character. Mm-hmm. But I think in general, like the generalizations that we have about different types and the way they respond in conflict is really helpful, because it's all about probabilities. Like personality is all about probabilities and not certainties, right? So it is probable that in conflict, I tend to withdraw, and then I will do some of the things we've already mentioned, right? Just as you were interviewing me. And periodically, if something trauma triggered me, or like really like triggered off my little limbic system, and I got all dysregulated and stuff, I might go to 8 and really surprise myself.
Sure, sure.
Like I just may lose my cool. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what I got.
No, I love it, because I think that's where, for better or worse, what we see, on the conflict side of things is you want to jump to fixing the issue or the problem. You don't stop to assess, and you come up with your game plan. It's generalized. Okay, I know in this setting, the handbook says to do X, Y, and Z. And sure, probabilities, maybe that's right. But if you don't take the time to assess and see, one, exactly who you're dealing with, two, what the conflict's actually truly about, that's where we end up doing more harm than good. And so that was my background. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good question. How often is the conflict not about what the two parties think it's about?
That's a fun one. Yes. A lot, as I know, I'm sure you see in the corporate system as well, but even the relational side of things. So, so many times where we see people that, whether it's relationships, whether it's their significant other, their family members, their friends, where they think it's a relational conflict, and it's really not. It's a process conflict. From a fun side of things, we see it with the family vacation, which I always ask people in a training or setting is, okay, if you can't think of the person in your family that is this person, it's you. It's okay. We're going on family vacation. We're going on this trip, and it's planned a certain way. And we have to detour, and everybody's having a lot of fun, but it's not having fun with my plan. Well, then I'm triggered. I'm upset with this type of situation. That's, we see it so much as well. Grandma's this, grandpa's this, uncle's this, aunt's this. Really, it's process type situation. It's nothing to do with relational conflict specifically. On a more drastic side of things, we see this a ton in terms of, I've done over 1,000 divorce mediations, which is why my hair used to be flowing and beautiful like Thor, and it's just not anymore. We see so many relationships fail, not necessarily because of the relationship in terms of how they treat each other and personalities fit. And you would think on paper this would be perfect, but it's really a process issue. They both want to be in control. They have their process and their way. And so, whether it's a divorce mediation, whether it's a corporate, workplace conflict, so many times we jump to, the personalities themselves or the relationships themselves versus what that conflict's actually about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember years ago, and this is just not particularly tight, but I remember one time I had a person come into my office. I was in a different line of work at the time. But I was a therapist, right? And they come in the office and they're furious about something with me, and they're mad at me about it. But I kept thinking to myself, they're not talking to me. Like I can just tell there's someone else in the room. And so I said to them, who else is in the room right now? And they said, they kind of looked confused. I said, because I don't feel like you're actually talking to me. I feel like I'm standing in for somebody else right now in your mind. Who else is in the room right now?
Love it.
And they kind of like stood back and they said, oh my gosh, my dad is in the room.
Wow.
And I said, yeah. And frankly, I don't feel like being his stand-in right now.
That's funny.
Never.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, man, conflict is really, really complicated. And I love how you've broken it down. And again, everybody, we're talking about this book, How to Get Along with Anyone. We're talking with James Guinn, who's the author or the co-author of it. And there are these 5 categories. So let's run through a description that you have a sort of a 1-sentence description of each of these sort of categories, right? So avoiders, like uninterested in minor details, right? Excels in solitary work, has a knack for concentration. That's sort of a description, right? But tell me something else about avoiders.
Sure. Oftentimes they get a negative connotation. They avoid conflict because they're scared of it. That is not true. They do an opportunity cost analysis on every conflict. And once it's time to deal with it and they deem that, you know what, I need to deal with it, it's game on. They're going to take that competitive mindset, but they'll avoid until they think, all right, I really need to deal with this.
Right. So I hear 9s, Enneagram 9s in that category, right? The peacemakers. Sometimes, this is kind of strange, 7s fall in this category because 7s, they're avoiding difficult feelings. Like you sometimes have to light a 7. You have to light yourself on fire in front of a 7 before they go, oh, we have a problem here. Like they're like, I want to talk about anything else, right? So even though they're in that assertive triad, 3 7s and 8s, sometimes, and they can do conflict, but man, it can be tricky for certain 7s. Okay, so tell me about competitors.
Sure. Well, one, you just settled a debate between my wife and I, who we all know is way smarter than me. We've been together for a long time, thanks to a 5-to-1 girl-to-guy ratio at Abilene Christian University. When I married her without her knowing anything about it, so that's the 3 in me. Got her. Is that yes? That's what she says as well. That 7s align very well with avoiders, which is what she is. So our competitors, those are the people. Some of one sentence, if they have a problem with you, you're going to know it. And you're going to know why and what they think the outcome should be. No small talk, blunt, direct, to the point. Here's my issue. It's not personal. Just, Anthony, I think we can resolve it if we do X, Y, and Z. So why are we wasting time talking about it? Let's go fix it.
All right. Well, for sure, I think 8s fall in this category.
Maybe some 3.
I think 1s fall in this category.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say 1s fall in this category. I think probably, counterphobic 6s would fall in this category. There's a certain style of 6 that would fall into this category. But that's what I got so far. I got to think more about it. So 7 and 9 for avoiders. I'd say 1s and 8s so far under competitors. Let's see what we get left over, and then we'll debate where they fall.
I love it. Well, one, if you're willing to come down to Aggie Land, I'll buy you a Copy Bridge burger, and we can talk the 6s and how it fits, because that is fascinating. I love it.
Hey friends, the Enneagram is a remarkably powerful tool for improving relationships. Whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, understanding the people around you is critical to building better relationships. The Enneagram provides a framework for understanding different perspectives and communication styles. Imagine knowing why your colleague reacts defensively in meetings or why your partner needs space when they're stressed. Understanding these dynamics helps you navigate both your inner world and your relationships with more empathy, patience, and compassion. It's like having a cheat sheet for human behavior. Don't know your type? Well, find out today with my new Typology Institute Enneagram Assessment at typologyinstitute.com/assessment. And be sure to enter the discount code Typology Podcast on the checkout page to take 10% off your assessment. Go to typologyinstitute.com/assessment.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
If you've been married or in a long-term relationship for more than, 5 minutes, you probably know that money has a way of finding its way into the conversation. And not always in the most peaceful way. Financial stress can sneak into relationships quietly at first. A little tension here, a misunderstanding there, and before long, you're realizing the conversation about groceries somehow turned into a conversation about your entire financial future. The truth is, money carries a lot of emotional weight. It taps into our fears about security, our hopes for the future, and sometimes the beliefs we grew up with about success or failure. And that can create real stress for couples. Therapy isn't about someone giving you financial advice. It's about having a place to talk through the pressure that money can create in a relationship. The anxiety, the expectations, the misunderstandings, and learning healthier ways to navigate it together. BetterHelp connects people with licensed therapists in the U.S. You fill out a short questionnaire, and they match you with a therapist based on your needs and preferences. With over 30,000 therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, they've built a thoughtful matching process. And if the match isn't right, you can switch at any time. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/typologypodcast. That's betterhelp.com/typologypodcast. All right, well, let's talk about analyzers.
So our analyzers are the ones that we call them the judge. They're never going to be rushed to a decision. They're never going to get emotionally involved or really, outspoken, no outbursts. They're going to gather all of the facts, and then they're going to make a very firm decision. They're going to go to the person. They're not going to talk around their backs. They're not going to be afraid of that person, but they're not going to be rushed. So the negative characteristics is they can be stubborn. Once they've made a decision, it can be very hard to change their mind. But they're also never going to be accused of being emotional and making rash decisions.
Okay. I am definitely not an analyzer because I'm not only concerned about the facts. I'm really concerned always at the forefront about the relationship. And they're very interwoven, and I can't leave emotions out.
Sure.
Yeah. So
feelings are too involved. And I'm just naturally attuned to feelings. I'm a heart type, not a head type. So I'm really focusing in on what's the tenor of the feelings here. What about you, Ant?
I agree with you. I'm very feeling oriented. I don't lean into my feelings. Well, I'm not taken by my feelings, but I use my feelings for sure. But very relational. So it's like, that's always like you said, at the forefront. So I'm not disconnected. I'm never disconnected from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then
that's probably me not explaining right, is a relational triggered analyzer. They're going to take that approach, thinking about the relationship first. So in a relational setting, they're never going to confront that person and say, you said this, and here's what I think this means. And boom, boom, boom. They're going to gather all the facts about that first. That doesn't mean they're removing emotion from it. Doesn't mean they're not putting the relationship at the forefront. That's their handling approach. They're not going to be rushed into, they're never going to blow up in a relational setting. It's, somebody said something and that hurt my feelings and I'm going to blow up and say something in return. I'm going to think about, why did they say this? I'm going to get that full story, and then I'm going to talk with them specifically about it.
So I definitely do that. I will give a lot of thought unless it's like something where it's clear to me and I know, but I would tend to, for the sake of the relationship, I would want to make sure I've thought through.
Well, yeah. Plus, you also don't have the luxury of time, right? At times, right? Like sometimes you're like, oh, I don't have a week to talk about this with a bunch of people. It is right in my grid right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But if I have time, yeah. All right. So I see with analyzers for sure fives sort of fall into that, under that rubric. I kind of fall into that rubric, which is interesting, but I don't feel entirely. There's another one on here I feel a little bit more closely aligned with. Well, let's find out. All right. Describe collaborators.
Collaborators, that's me. Those are the people that want to engage and connect with anyone. No conflict is too small. They're going to want to resolve it. They're going to dive deep into the issues, get to know people. They're going to identify that underlying interest. They're going to really want to connect and draw information out of people so they can manipulate the outcome. So on the positive side of a collaborator, they're going to be doing an excellent job at leading people to positive solutions. The negative side of a collaborator is they come across as manipulative, and they can be. They can do their best to manipulate the outcome. It depends on what they want that outcome to be. And so their goal is to connect, identify what everyone around them wants, and then do their best to lead them to a specific outcome.
Okay. So we know definitely threes are in that category. For sure. And they have a chameleon-like ability to kind of like adapt to the situation. But it's usually but threes, and you tell me, James, that this is true of you, they can be impatient with feelings. So it's a little bit like, okay, these feelings are slowing us down. And really, I want to resolve the conflict, not so much because of the hurt between us, but because it's creating inefficiencies in the system. And I just don't want to mess with that. So let's just take the feelings out of it, look at the problem, and solve that. Even though the feelings are important, but they're going to get maybe possibly dismissed.
I love it. So that is that is spot on. So we see a lot of our collaborators are threes, are task triggered. It's right. I want to get this task done. I recognize I'm a chameleon. I'm a three. I recognize that I need to respect the feelings and need to make sure that those are a piece of this, but the end justifies the means. The ultimate goal is resolving the task. So that's where we see a lot of collaborators are task triggered.
Yep. All right. And then there's accommodators. So prioritizes achievements, right? What else?
So our accommodators would rather get the job done themselves versus confront someone else blunt and direct and to the point and tell them you're not picking up the slack, you're not doing your job. They would rather do it themselves in that way. So I teach a bunch of undergrad, grad, and doc students at Texas A&M University, and absolutely love it. And one of my favorite things to do is group projects in every class. One, because I'm the devil, because everybody hates group projects. Yep. Two, because I get to force them to, when they come to me, I don't do peer reviews. They don't get to complain to me and say, Jim did not do his job. If you have a problem with Jim, you can kick Jim out of the group. But you have to tell Jim, I'll support you, I'll back you up. But you have to be the one to have that conversation. And I see a lot of accommodators say, well, never mind, we're good. I'd rather just do the project myself and get it done versus have that one-on-one confrontation with that person.
Well, we have twos in that category.
For sure, yeah.
And some fours.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In that category. And particularly because under stress, when they're doing well, they go to the high side of one where it'd be like, I'll just do it myself. It's going to get done better that way anyway. But I can see where twos and fours kind of fall into that category, but I want to hear what you have to say. So if you had to think about avoiders, they're uninterested in minor details. They like solitary work. They have a knack for concentration. And what else did we say about them? They want to avoid conflict, right?
Avoid conflict, not because they're scared of it, more just opportunity cost side of things.
Okay. Oh. And we said ones and sevens in that category, right? Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
And this is not a bit that we're getting along with anyone here because of the book, but yes, that is exactly what it would be categorized as.
Okay. And then what about
1 and 9? 1 and 7, you said.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm just, I don't know enough about these in particular, but all right, competitors, right? Always pushing the envelope, never rests on their laurels, takes risk for the sake of achievement. I put down 1 and 8 and a counterphobic 6. What did you have?
So I personally had 8-1, and I would love to talk about the 6 and get your opinion. So not plugging to be back on here, but would love to hear your thoughts on the 6. I had not thought of that before. But. So
there's there's 3 types of 6s, but the 2 that are most interesting is the phobic 6 and the counterphobic 6. The phobic 6 would rather submit than rebel. Mm-hmm. And the counterphobic 6 would rather rebel than submit. And sometimes the counterphobic 6 gets confused with 8s because they're quite assertive, quite aggressive at times.
That's fascinating.
So I can see where they could almost be split into different categories depending on the type of 6. Which, I don't know. Have you had trouble figuring out where 6s land?
Yes, so much between, we see the sixes that are process triggered versus relational triggered. And not to ramble on too much about that, but that's where we see the biggest discrepancy is sometimes these sixes that are process triggered and they want to be in control, and losing that control stresses them out. They'll present in a different way than the ones that are relational triggered. And no, they can't help it. They're going to act that way because of that specific emotional trigger.
Interesting. So where do you put sixes typically in your mind?
It's a hard one to put them in. We typically put them in the analyzer side of things, just because not necessarily going to be rushed, but they can be very firm in their convictions.
Yes. So interesting you should say that. Sixes are very analytical.
Mm.
Now, where they get into trouble is they analyze the situation, then they do a lot of self-guessing and self-doubting, right? They'll come up with some conclusions in the analysis, but then they start to self-doubt. But you're right that there are sixes, like for example, we always say sixes should all work for BMW. They should all work for German car companies. Lots of precision. It's very well built. There's a kind of six that looks very one-ish. So there's that conviction, that analysis can get a little rigid, sometimes, but that's more driven by fear than by anger in the case of the six. So that's interesting. So right now, 1 and 7 is an avoider. We have 1 and 8 as competitors. As analyzers, so far we got 5 and possibly 6, right? All right. We've talked about the collaborator. You call them oration virtuoso. What does that mean?
I think you summed it up as chameleon. They connect with everybody. That's what they thrive doing. That whole conflict timeline process of building rapport being the first step. They're great at that. That is their thing. So they have no problem connecting, no problem changing back in between, and that's where I've always based the three skill sets off of that.
Right. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, we know that 3s fall into the collaborator category. Let's stop there for a second. We know 3s fall into that category. There may be one more, but let's find out. Accommodators.
Sure. Accommodators have always seemed that 9 and 2 have kind of always been my thought. But as you can tell from me being a Cowboys fan, you won't hurt my feelings if you tell me that I'm dead wrong.
No question. 2s and 9s, right? Like would fall into that category, and some 4s. But I can also see 4s in the collaborator space. And what kind of makes this complicated, right, isn't just the core type in the wing, it's the subtype.
Yes.
And because, like, for example, a self-pres 4 is less withdrawn than a social 4 and maybe more assertive. They look more like 3s or 7s. So like on our Enneagram assessment, right, we spent like a gajillion dollars on the research side with the research psychologist plus, a team of people that were his PhD students and, blah, blah, blah. And the subtype category, like that, when you take our assessment, you not only get your type and wing, you also get your subtype. And the subtypes, man, are so important because like I was just saying about 6s, I gave you 2 for 4s and 6s. This is where it gets important. The 3-4 subtypes are so different from each other, they might as well be their own numbers. They might as well be their own types. They're that different from each other. And the 3-6s are too. The other numbers are more nuanced expressions of the core type. But these are like 3 different types. I mean, like, as a self-pres 4, I don't present anything like a social 4. The social 4 is the really kind of artsy, angsty, tortured type, and they kind of radiate that tortured, angsty thing. I look like a 3 or a 7 all the time, but I am all 4 for sure, right? So that's what makes it even more complicated and more interesting and nerdy to me as I look at these categories. So everybody, I'm talking with James Guinn, author of How to Get Along with Anyone. And I love this for all of you listening because number one, every single type on the Enneagram needs to figure out, every human being needs to figure out who they are in conflict so that they can navigate conflict with self-awareness, being responsive versus reactive, knowing this is who I am when conflict arises, so that when the moment presents itself, they can operate from a place of real emotional intelligence and wisdom. Is that fair, James?
No, I think that's spot on, and I think that's the biggest focus, and why I love the Enneagram is it's getting proactive. It's trying to head off.
So you're the subtype of the book, though, is the playbook for predicting and preventing conflict at work and at home. But there really is, ultimately, at the end of the day, is there anything, does avoiding conflict, like it's not predicting and preventing and avoiding conflict at work and at home. It is inevitable. It's inescapable, right?
It is. And it's how do we keep it from escalating?
All right. So let me ask you this question. Is there any one of these 5 sort of categories of the ways that people respond typically in conflict, right? What triggers them? What are their strengths, weaknesses, et cetera? Is there any one that particularly you see repeatedly has the most problems with conflict resolution?
Great question. So I think the biggest thing is it's more about matchups. If you're dealing with an avoider, then the worst possible profile you can have is being a collaborator. All that's going to do is drive them nuts. That's going to make conflict worse. It's going to be a worse situation. Whereas, for a competitor and avoider, when it's a conflict setting, we want to forgo the small talk. We want to get down, blunt, direct, to the point. Let's go handle this. Let's get it off our plates. We call that the domino technique. We know the core issue. We know what's going on. We're going to knock that domino down. The rest are going to fall. Whereas a lot of the other profiles, we use the momentum technique. It's the whole getting DS. It's hey, we don't want to rush an analyzer. We need to play the game with a collaborator. We need to make sure an accommodator feels comfortable. We need to get some small wins on some smaller issues, some smokescreen type issues to build up that momentum to get to the thing that's really, truly bothering them. And so, versus, one specific profile we have the most trouble with, sure, we see a lot of times in corporate settings, someone that's an accommodator that's process triggered. That is, we go consult, we see, you're going to have some issues. That's someone that has control issues and they really want something a specific way, but they'll never say it. They're never going to come out and tell you, I want things done a specific way. You're seeing a lot of trouble with our collaborators.
I see. Okay, so this is where these typologies get sort of interesting. Mm-hmm. Because of there's also the task conflict, process conflict, and the relational side that collides with these different types, if you will. And depending on, right? Like, so then you have, this is actually really interesting what you guys have done. Okay. So I was in a meeting last week at a company, 2-day workshop I was leading, and the issue of conflict came up. And I've got a room full of different types. They're all in HR. And one of the guys, about 20 people in the room, one of the guys is an 8. And I said, tell me how you respond to conflict, right? And he was on a panel. So I had all these different types on a panel and I'm interviewing him. Tell me how you deal with conflict. He goes, no problem. He said, I just focus on the problem, not the person. And I just like, okay, we got a problem. It's just like any other problem. Let's solve it. Right. And he's like, no big deal. So I was like, okay, so you're comfortable with conflict because it's really about the problem, right? It's not really about the person most of the time. Okay, great. I'm not that way. Mm-hmm. Like I have trouble actually separating the problem from the person and the feelings and the relationship. And I always, as he was talking, I was like, damn, I got to do that. Like, that's really good. Like, I've got to figure out how to separate my identity, my feelings, all this stuff, and just focus on, okay, what's the problem? Let's solve the problem. Everything else will probably be okay if I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It depends on the person. With some people, absolutely that is going to be the way to go. For other people, if you just go focus on the problem and ignore the relationship and the feelings and all the emotions, it's going to completely backfire. And that's where why I love the Enneagram is that no, it's you need to assess first and see. There's a lot of great playbooks and there's a lot of techniques. There's a lot of things you can do that are going to work well with some people versus with others. And there's no perfect Enneagram profile. There's no perfect conflict profile that's going to kumbaya and make us all get along with everyone and everything else. We need to know, sure, we need to know our strengths and weaknesses, but we need to know what the other, person that we're in conflict is and what's going to relate the best to them, what their triggers are so that we can really adapt those techniques. And that's my favorite part about what y'all do.
So, James, you're a 3 on the Enneagram. In your own personal development right now, as understood through the lens of the Enneagram, what are you personally working on, not just in the area of conflict, but just in life in general, to become the highest expression of yourself?
Sure. So I get told a lot I'm a mixture of Ted Lasso and Chris Traeger, but on way too much coffee.
That's so interesting.
Like I have a 3-wing-2 mixed with some.
That's so funny because, okay, I'll tell you what those types are, I think, but go ahead.
I love it. So for me, I'm very, it's to put on my three hat, very, very driven, but on myself. So I want to make sure I take care of everyone else around me. Drives me absolutely nuts if I'm letting other people down, and I would rather, wake up at 1:30 and, go to bed never than allow that to happen. So I am unbelievably task triggered. That is my thing. But if I have an issue with somebody, they're never going to know it. I'm going to sit down and try and figure it out and really do my best to relate to them. But I would rather just go ahead and fix it myself. So that's my self-analysis that you can have Chelsea on here and she'll probably tell you something different.
And Chelsea's a 7.
Chelsea's 7. She's 7 and a avoider.
Interesting.
Wow.
But that's where we factor in. We have to include the statistics of 5-to-1 girl to guy ratio in college. And I proposed right when we graduated and there weren't that many other guys around.
Right. So are you trying to say she's settled? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I got one by default. We have 2 beautiful children. We've been together forever. Like, yeah, she doesn't know. And then she's a night shift ER nurse. So you deal with all kinds of other crazy people that come into the night shift ER. So I just let her know, baby, I'm not that bad. Like, really,
right.
You factor that in. So
yeah. But you set the bar really low, man.
It is. It's wind up by default. That's every 3.
Well, I totally love this, man, because as you note in the book, right, like the average American worker spends 156 hours a year in some kind of workplace conflict. Lord knows what it is at home. I don't have any idea, right? I would imagine less, depending on the situation. However, conflict is just part of life, and we have to figure out how to do it. Don't you always wish, I don't know, Anthony, if you do, but I always wish that people would teach kids starting in about 6th grade about different Enneagram types.
Oh, yeah.
But also about how to do conflict. Like, why don't we have classes? Why don't we ever have classes starting in 6th or 7th grade about different types of personalities? We're just left to go out into the world with trying to figure it out, groping in the dark, looking for the light switch, like trying to figure it out. When if we at least gave people a basic sort of idea of like, look, there are different types of people, and here's a couple. It's not a perfect system, but it's pretty good. And, it would give you a leg up. What do you James, am I right on this? Wouldn't it be good if we just put this into a curriculum somewhere?
Man, I love it. Well, you're teaming me up and speaking my language. So that's my main job at Texas A&M University is we are doing our absolute best to incorporate, these skill sets and teach them to kids across the world through sport and after school programs and things. Because I'm with you. I mean, so much of us. I mean, it's great. We want to learn who we are and what we do and how to get along with anyone, but you can lead a horse to water, can't make them drink, to where, if we can, get this information out to as many kids as possible. But also, I mean, I'm a parent to young kids and yeah, they're smarter than me, but if I had known, a lot of these things and skill sets to be able to work with my, daughters at home, I mean, that makes such a difference as well.
Well, I love this. Everybody, the book is How to Get Along with Anyone, the playbook for predicting and preventing conflict at work and home. It's written by John Elliott and Jim Guinn. I'm so glad you were on the show. Tell John we missed him. And I just loved going through these and trying to figure out the interplay between what you're doing and the Enneagram. And I know that it had a great influence on your work, but I just wanted to hear, and because when I went through your book and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like just, like there are all these correlations between the Enneagram and your work. So I know our folks will be interested in it. And tell us where we learn more about it and you guys.
Man, absolutely. So the conflictdocs.com. So we have not only access to the book on every major bookstore and things along those lines, a bunch of other resources, as well as our conflict management profile that'll let you know which one you are.
Man, so good. All right, everybody. Again, How to Get Along with Anyone is the name of the book. It's out on Simon & Schuster, and you need to check it out. Jim, once again, thanks for being on the show. Or I should say, James. You probably hate it when someone calls you Jim.
Oh man, I'm the third. So my dad he's 6'2", close to 400 pounds, NFL DT kind of guy. So I'm Little Jim. You can call me
Little Jim. Hold on a second. How bad would it have been if this whole interview I had called you Jimmy? What if I just called you Jimmy this whole interview?
I wish. So my dad is Jimmy. My grandpa, who played for the Packers, big old DT. He was Big Jim. So I'm just over here being Little Jim or anything with a J. I answer.
There's a dynasty of Jims going on here, and I just want to we got Big Jim, we got Little Jim, we got Jimbo. I don't know who else is on this show, but
Who did he play for?
So my grandpa got drafted by the Packers, Vince Lombardi, and turned it down because he made $10,000 a year as a DT and $13,000 a year as a salesman.
Wow.
So that was his. So I was the wimpy 230-pound baseball player that wanted to go somewhere where they would call me Big Jim.
Yeah, I was the big 125-pound violin carrier.
That's why I've had 13 broken bones and a bunch of surgeries. So that's the way to go.
I think I'm glad for that old violin. Well, anyway, everybody listening, we're so glad you were part of our show today. And man, you know that we love you. We just think the world of you and glad you're part of our family. May you have love. May you have joy. May you have peace. May you have healing. May you have rest. Until next time.
All right. That was incredibly helpful. Just having language for how you show up and conflict can change everything. Now that you understand your default style, we'll dig into what to actually do in the moment when conflict situations arise. Specifically, Ian and I will talk through how to step into hard conversations with clarity and confidence. So start thinking about the conversation you've been avoiding. And in our next episode, we'll give you a simple, practical way in. That's it for me, Anthony Skinner. Hope you have a great day.